Okay, we'll get started. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. We have a wonderful panel here today. So I thought, everyone here on this panel has different roles within big organizations that are making a big impact on many enterprises and the AI landscape. So I thought we could start by going around and saying what you do in your role as it relates to AI, and then maybe how that's changed over the past 18 months with what we're seeing in generative AI specifically.
I can go first.
Yeah.
So,
Great.
when I started my AI journey, I was more focused on industry at Accenture, right? So I was, we were focused on building data and AI for retailers. That's what I did when I started my Accenture AI career. But, due to the pent-up demand in Gen AI, we have in fact created a dedicated group to just build Gen AI solutions for clients globally. And now I focus on Microsoft Gen AI, and we build Gen AI solutions on the Microsoft stack for our clients all over the world. And we are seeing incredible demand. There's a lot of excitement, but there's also nervousness in terms of whether a client should actually get in, what they should wait and watch. And we are approaching it step by step. So for us right now, it's all about meeting the client where they are at, right, in terms of where they are, in terms of maturity, AI maturity, and then accelerate their progress, right, from the point they're on. So that's what I do on a day-to-day basis. And we've got, in fact, every brand you see around here is my client. So
Awesome.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sharbani. I work at Google in our core machine learning group, and I looked after a couple key areas that are a little bit deeper down in the stack. Before I joined Google, I was at Alexa for 8 years, so I was focused a little more on kind of customer use cases for AI in general. And today I look after kind of a couple key areas. So some of you may have heard of TensorFlow, JAX, Keras. I look after all the frameworks that we have at Google. And then I look after all of our training and inference, both from the data center as well as the device side, and then have a data analytics team that I look after as well.
Hi, I'm Gerson Rodriguez, and I work for Oracle NetSuite. I lead AI strategy now and partnerships. Before that, I was on a more technical role. I used to lead platforms, so all the layers of customization, infrastructure, data science that supplied services for our products. So we offer products on the enterprise, ERP, CRM, a bunch of things that that companies use, and those products are founded on a platform, not only infrastructure but a software platform that allow people to build stuff on top of it, and our own internal teams, our developers. So I used to lead product management on that area, and then generative AI came to place, and they said, we need somebody that has the background who can strategize and try to do something so that we can have some answers for OpenAI and the Googles of the world, and here I am.
Awesome. Everyone has very different complementary roles. So I think, one of the things we've been talking about at Madrona, but then also broadly, is there's all these different functions within enterprises that can adopt AI in different ways. So from each of your perspectives, which business functions do you think are most ripe to integrate AI into their workflow? And where do you see the most opportunity in AI being integrated into different workflows throughout this coming year?
So you mean a business domain, like HR, finance, or?
Yeah, within a business domain.
So again, it depends, right? I wish I had a simple answer to that question. It depends on the industry you're in, right? So the way retailers think is very different from how manufacturing would approach it, right? It's very different for financial services, so it does vary. But right now we see a lot of focus on productivity, right? So it's about improving employee productivity, which is easy, right? It's an easy win, right? You can do a lot using Gen AI. Right, whether it's writing a better email, summarizing an email, right, summarizing documents, creating better PowerPoints, whatnot. And so we've seen this explosion of co-pilots for field employees, right, employees who are in the field, or even internal employees, right. It's really easy. It could be a co-pilot, HR co-pilot that answers questions about your PTO, your benefits, right, whatever. And then in retail, we are seeing, like a simple example, right? Barista Copilot. Right? Let me make the life of a barista easy. So, by providing them a Copilot on a handheld device. Same thing in banking also, you can deploy Copilots for the field staff, right? To answer simple questions, make their job easier. So those are some areas where we are seeing, introduction of Copilot, right, improving employee productivity. And there was an IMF report that clearly showed a 40% improvement in productivity, right? It's good in the sense, of course, the employees are becoming more productive, but there's also risk, right, of job displacement. If I can do the same amount of work with less people, right? If I can, cut 40%. Then why do I need as many people? So there is a little bit of a discussion happening in terms of what that means for the broader society. And it's all on us to be responsible and make sure that we handle the displacement, right? And so I think we have to wait and watch and see how it evolves. But in terms of what I see in the market today, it's mostly co-pilots for different functions within the firm. I'm seeing less consumer-facing solutions because enterprises are, it's risky, right, to deploy something for the customer without testing it internally. So right now, I think companies are deploying solutions internally, playing with it, getting comfortable with it before going customer-facing. Mm-hmm. There are some examples of customer-facing solutions that we're deploying, especially in Europe. But I think right now the focus is more inwards, building solutions for the employees, and then over time, build more customer-facing solutions. At least that's what I'm saying.
Thanks. Sharbani, which roles at Google do you see are integrating AI the most into their workflows?
Well, I think one of the things, I'm going to go a little more general on this one, if that works.
Yeah.
So one of the ways that generative AI kind of has changed how we're interacting with tech in general is probably most of you have been playing around with prompt engineering. Yeah? Everybody's playing around? Okay, great. So that's really, I think, in the short term and longer term, going to be up-leveling how much logic and systems thinking you have to be bringing into programming in general and whatever you want to build. And prompt engineering is great because it's accessible to any function. You don't have to be an engineer, you can be a designer, you can be a PM and go out and be prototyping. And so one of the areas that I'm actually most inspired by right now is some innovations around visual programming frameworks in general. So you don't even have to be typing. You can just be thinking about what those pipelines might want to look like. Or you can be a designer and just designing. I think Figma has now, you can convert your designs straight into code. And so basically, how do you need to take a lot of the kind of more basic building blocks of code and just imagine what you want to build and be using, kind of tuning more into that higher level logic? I think that's kind of the place where I think we can be going in the future.
Yeah, so a lot of productivity impacting how people code and how product is created.
Yeah, it's just even up-leveling a lot of things that we would consider to be basic productivity. Like when you were able to start actually setting alarms and timers and starting creating routines and, when people started really hacking it this and that, you were able to do so much more in your life and start having deeper levels of thoughts, deeper level of interactions, higher states of flow. And this is just taking that to the next level.
Awesome.
All right. I might take a general too, but I might combine a little bit of what these folks have said here from a different point of view. So enterprises are looking to do 4 things, no matter where they are, profit or non-for-profit. It's just 4 things that they're trying to do, and AI is going to have an impact on those. Acquire and grow their customer base. That's number 1. Number 2, create great products and services. Number 3, improve your cash and profits. And number 4, hire and empower the best people possible. Those are the main 4 things that any enterprise do. Where are we seeing the biggest changes right now? Initially on the top of the funnel, which it was acquire customers. All that has to do with that sales, marketing. There is a runway on that. Initially, but now we're also seeing a lot on creating great products and services. What you mentioned about developing, being able to build stuff from generative AI is an example that we're seeing software companies trying to get access to some of these platforms so they can create fast solutions, and companies, just regular enterprises, they can create fast solutions to go there. But we're seeing a lot about managing your inventory, demand forecasting, understanding your customers better, and understanding the different flows of supply chain around the world. Since the pandemic, we have seen an enormous emphasis on AI applications to try to figure out not only where is your shipment, but where are the raw materials that you need to get in order to build the best product at the cheapest price. So it's all about doing the most with the less, but on those 4 areas. So if you are building something or you're planning to build something on AI for the enterprise, make sure that you are aligned either with any of these: acquiring and grow customers, creating great products and services, improving your bottom line, cash and profits, and developing applications that will help people to hire and empower the best, like you were saying.
Great. How are you seeing enterprises make the decision to buy something generative AI related? So plug in OpenAI or another model, or build something from scratch in-house?
Yeah, in fact, it's a great question, right? So, we call it buy, build, or boost, right? Those are the 3 options, right? You can either buy something from the market, OpenAI or, Mistral. There's so many great models out there. That's one option. And build, use that as is. Or you can, fine-tune a model, right? You can customize it, which we are doing, by the way. Not a lot, but some. So that's more like, you can think of it as extend or boost. And then there is also customized, right? So those are some of the things we're seeing. And then there are some clients who are actually building LLM from scratch, right? Bloomberg GPT was a good example where Bloomberg actually invested millions of dollars in building. But the reality is building a custom LLM or building your own LLM is extremely expensive. I'm sure you guys know that. You're looking at hundreds of millions of dollars, right? In some cases, you can do it with a few $1 million, but then it won't be that good, reliable, accurate, and whatnot. So my guidance to most of my customers is to buy, right, and to some extent customize, right? So maybe use OpenAI or Google or whatever different Gen AI stacks available in the market. The vast majority of clients right now, they don't have the maturity to build an LLM and or customize or adapt it. So the easy thing you can do is call an API, right? Call your AI APIs and build as much as you can. And so again, it depends on the maturity of the client. If the client is very mature, then yes, they can start looking at customizing existing LLMs or maybe building their own LLM. But I would recommend that building LLM should be the exception. You don't want to build your own LLM. Maybe 2% or less cases, yes. Like healthcare is a good example where, if you're doing something really niche or super complex, yes, maybe neuroscience or something, right? I can see an LLM add value. But for the vast number of cases, you can use one of the LLMs from the hyperscalers, right? Either Google, Microsoft, AWS, or others. And then one thing I've seen is customers building interesting solutions by simply calling those APIs, right? I want to give one example because we just released this in France a couple of weeks back, and there's a lot of excitement around it. And that is to build solutions to enable customers to do things themselves, right? Whether it's fixing your car or reimagining your living room or your kitchen or painting your house. So there is this trend, especially in Europe, towards DIY tools using Gen AI, where they are building solutions that a customer can simply, as a chat, it could be a chat interface or voice, doesn't really matter, multimodal as well, where the customer could go in and say, hey, help me paint my house. How many liters of paint do I need? And here's my budget, make it all happen, right? So you impose those constraints on the solution and it comes back with the answer. We're seeing a lot of that. We also believe that shopping as we know it is going to get completely disrupted. Right? Gone are the days where you do point and click shopping and you do, you search for some stuff, put it in a basket, pay for it. That's gone, right? Now it's going to be more abstract, right? You can go from a customer's abstract intent to a purchasable outcome, right? So the customer might want to reimagine their living room or kitchen or whatever, or they might want to, make a Italian dish for dinner. you can go from that intent to a purchasable basket, right? So you can create a grocery basket, right, for them with all the ingredients, and then they can say things like, hey, I have eggs in my refrigerator already, and it'll negate that. So what we are seeing is this combination of not just the foundation model, but also reasoning engines on top of that. So you're going to do some level of foundation, you're going to call the APIs, obviously, and then you're going to reason on top of that and provide customers things that are, very usable, right? Whether it's booking a trip or whatever. And I'll make one final point, and then I'll wrap it up. We also think that the future belongs to agents, right? And these are, in the past, you go to a web or a mobile app, and then you do your purchasing or whatever that you do. In the future, we think there'll be passive agents, AI agents that are based on LLM foundation models and reasoning, that's going to live somewhere, right? In the digital space, and they'll go and do things for you, right? They'll go do shopping for you. They'll be your health advisor, your therapist. They could be your financial advisor, whatever, right? And so that's the world we are going into, and I think it's good for enterprises to start building those agents, or at least start envisioning them by simply calling the APIs. I would say don't build LLMs, don't even do customization, just call the APIs that the Googles and the Microsofts are providing, and build great apps that are super customer enriching and improve that, right? If you, at the end of the day, if you win the customer, then everything else works for you. So that's what I advise my clients. They're not the Googles and the Microsofts of the world, but they are average retailers and CPGs building solutions that are enriching the life of the customer. So yeah, sorry, long answer to a simple question.
It's great. You covered a ton of stuff. You covered cost structure, you covered customer archetypes, you covered potential value capture in different domains, and the future of agents.
Absolutely.
What do you guys want to dig into? It's a lot of stuff. I mean, I think my cost structure is very different than probably what most of you are looking at, but even within Google, there's, you don't have unlimited compute. That's always going to be the big constraint, and when you're trying to actually train a new model, exactly as Anoop said, I think, most practically you're going to want to be looking at chaining or cascading and focus relentlessly on those end customer use cases that you're actually trying to solve for. And we are seeing, that kind of API first versus model first. And there's very few people are going to be coming in and, digging into JAX and building LLMs from scratch. You're usually going to be coming in, fine-tuning for your different use cases. And a lot of your European use cases as well, there's a lot of changes. I'm not a lawyer, there's a lot of changes coming in privacy, et cetera, and when you want to be fine-tuning on personal devices, on personal data, et cetera. So a lot of the API first makes a lot more sense in that case.
Yeah, build, buy, big question right now, all over the place. Deloitte put out a report last year at the end of the year saying, hey, out of all study, I don't remember the number of CFOs, but they were saying 85% are saying, yes, we're interested on AI, especially generative AI, but only 1% had budget for it on 2024. And when you ask why, the main reason, because they don't know what to buy, they don't know what to do with it. So one of the things that factor on this is people basically is getting ramped up with the technology, understanding what is new, what I can do. And you will see that across the board. But you're right. There are we thank you for recommending your customers to buy. That's great. That's what we talk. That's what we recommend as well. But we see customers who are building on their own. 3 weeks ago, I talked to the CTO of Procter & Gamble, Vito Citarella, and I asked him, why in hell do you build an LLM for your company? Why you go through that whole thing? You don't have the infrastructure, whatever. His answer was there are a series of pointed use cases and functionality that we need here that none of you guys, not Microsoft, Oracle, Google, is going to build, because you're building foundations. You're building specific models that are more foundational and that will get me through APIs and so forth. But I need to get a little bit deeper into how I use my data, how we use the processes, and how my customers around the world will use the technology and interact with us. So in that case, for them and for that size of a company, probably makes sense. But when it comes to that decision, It's going to be about, do we have the capacity? Do we have the know-how? Do we have the case? Does it make sense? And we will see with the growth of open source, we will see more people diving into that. Mid-size, big company, then mid-size, and then pretty soon, in 2, 3, 4 years, people will be using Vertex AI to do a bunch of greater stuff, extending the platform, and so forth. So we will see more into it. But right now, I think the buy is bigger because of lack of knowledge and the cost. It's too costly.
And I want to add one more point. As Gerson was saying this, about P&G, right, where they want to build an LLM. Well, I would guide them to just use an SLM, right, a small language model. If they're so particular about a use case, right, they want exclusivity and they have some secret sauce. Don't build an LLM, just use an SLM, or maybe build an SLM, which is not, you don't need to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to build an SLM. 5.2 is a good example. Orca is another example. I'm sure Google is going to do something in the SLM space. So I would say maybe that $1 million at best, maybe less, build an SLM. Right? That's, I would suggest that to a P&G if the customer asks a question. And the other question, and I think it's relevant here, a lot of times when we go talk about GenAI to CIOs, the first question is, show me the ROI. If I'm going to invest a single dollar on GenAI, what's the ROI? And the best answer I've seen so far, based on some research, is, for every dollar you invest in GenAI, the best case is an average of $3.5, right? That is the return. And that you can only realize it after 14 months, right? So if people ask you to show you ROI, there's no ROI day one, right? It's going to take 14 months and beyond. And the average return is only $3.5. It's not 5x, it's not 10x, it's 100x. I'm sure people claim 100x and whatever. Over time, yes. But so that's something you want to keep in mind, right? And the risk of building an LLM or customizing an LLM is, if the rate of return is so low, right? If it's just 3.5x, it doesn't make any sense, right? Because by the time you realize the value, it's going to take time, and there's a risk of things becoming obsolete, right? Because none of the LLM tech we deal with is future-proofed, which means it's changing constantly, things are getting better. So I would highly recommend not to build LLM. At best, use an SLM or use the APIs that the hyperscalers are providing.
Yeah, that's all great insight.
I was just going to say, you have to be ruthlessly focused on what you're actually trying to solve at the end of the day, because with the cost structure is constantly changing, you could have infinite budget, but there are limited chips as well.
Absolutely,
and there's so much hoarding happening. People are just like, my instance, my chips, right? So you don't have as much shared compute as should be. This isn't being recorded as this, by the way. Just kidding. But right, you need to be pragmatic as well. You don't need to have access to all the compute, and you don't need to take your Maserati to the grocery store all the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sometimes some of us walk to the grocery store, but you get the point, right? That's where cascading, tuning, you have to think ruthlessly, what's the value you're actually providing to end customers? What's the thing you're actually trying to solve? For me, for example, I would love an agent that doesn't just book me a trip, but actually on my phone has all of the access to all of my private data, everything's done on the edge, run through TF Lite, but is actually coordinating my entire month instead of doing all these stagnant tasks, but actually doing something meaningful in life and creating that whole value chain. I don't know, how many of you have young kids and just have to, who wants somebody to just not tell you what's for dinner, but just make dinner appear for everybody's actual eating needs?
It's coming.
It needs to be mobile.
It's coming.
It's coming.
Okay, so that brings us to our next question. So we talk about, when we remove the challenges of adoption from the perspective of decision making and knowing what you want, but we have that big vision of our calendars being automated, having agents book order our meals, make our scheduling appointments, organize things within our work calendar and set up meetings and more. What is the biggest technical barrier you see to getting us to that point today?
So again, I think it's great to build cool things, right? But again, going back to ROI, right? If you're going to build something that's not going to give an ROI, nobody's going to build it, right? So I would say you start with the value calculator, right? That's what I always advise my clients, and no client would ever build a project without a proper ROI. In fact, we would not advise them to do that, right? So make sure that there is value in building whatever that you're trying to build. The other challenge is scale, right? It's not easy, and I've lived it, so I can say that it's not easy to scale a Gen AI solution. It's easy to build a cool GenAI solution that calls a bunch of APIs and does magic. Yes, easy, right? POC, prototype, easy. And we've done a lot of that around the world. But then when you have an app that's actually getting hit by millions of users every day, like we built one in France a couple of months back called Paint Advisor that helps customers in all of France paint their homes or whatever, right? It was easy to build it, right? My team actually built it in less than 2 months, but it took us 6 months to figure out how to scale it, but scale it cost effectively. I don't know if people realize, every time you call the GPT-4 API or one of the Google APIs, you're paying, right? And before you know it, you're going to pay millions of dollars, right, in fees by the end of the year. And that's something people don't think about. They get so excited, they're like, I'm going to call GPT-4 API hundreds and thousands of times, but there's a cost. So the trick is to build cost effectively, right? Keeping ROI in mind. Otherwise, what's going to happen is you're going to build a bunch of things, ROI won't be realized, the cloud costs are going to skyrocket, and people are going to get disappointed, right? That's the real risk. So I think scale is a big challenge, right? We are still all collectively trying to figure out how to scale cost effectively. That's not easy, that's complicated, and there is this whole concept of switchboard, and I don't want to get too much into it. But it's like, you can use multiple models and you can route calls appropriately and all that. Anyway, that's one challenge, right? So scale and cost is a challenge. Second is ethics and societal implications, right? Could be job displacement. It could be, I'm going to do this and make everything productive. But then what do I do with the folks that are no longer, adding value, right, directly? So there's a bigger, broader societal issue about job displacement and how to deal with it. I don't think, honestly, anyone really knows what's going to happen, right? There's going to be a societal shift, it's going to happen. There's going to be inequality. There's going to be all kinds of challenges around that. So that's an issue. And the last thing is fairness and, doing it responsibly, right? Protecting people's privacy and things like that. A lot of times that's an afterthought, right? You build the solution and then people are like, okay, I didn't think about responsibility, I didn't think about privacy and security. So, make sure. So right now that is a bit of an issue. I don't think anyone has fully figured out what responsible AI means in a Gen AI context. Security, privacy are all concerns. Cost, scale are concerns. And then lastly, this is one technology that's improving at exponential pace. So whatever you build will become obsolete in a few months or a year. It's just
fast.
It is. So if you look at web, mobile, and other technologies, right, they all improved at a linear scale, right? Like every year, web would improve 2x, 3x at best, right? But this is one technology where the improvement is happening at exponential scale. So imagine a ChatGPT that could be 1,000,000 times better, right, in a few years. Not 10x, not 100x, but 1,000,000 times better. The risk with that is if you are building a solution today, if you're not making it, backward compatible, forward compatible, not thinking through all that, your solution will become obsolete, right? It would get baked into whatever is going to happen next. And the other thing that this is my personal belief, I feel like Gen AI is eating old school AI or classic AI. What I mean by that is, a lot of things we did in the past, right? Supervised learning, predictive AI, whatnot, is getting like Gen AI, the foundation models are going to get so smart that they would invoke these algorithms within itself, right? At some point. And then the question is, do I really need to do AI? And I think Mark Anderson said software is killing the world or eating the world. He said something like, I feel like Gen AI is eating the world to some extent. And making sure that, so the last challenge is future-proofing whatever you build, right, is going to be a challenge. So you have to take a risk and you need to build it, hoping that, whatever API comes next, is able to support you and you're able to make forward progress. But, lastly, I think the risk of exponential improvement, it has to be factored into whatever you do with Gen AI.
I think a big piece of this, the things that I think about daily are how are you basically applying software best practices to science. A lot of kind of basics are still being developed. So how much of the cost structure do you guys want to dig into? Do you guys actually care about talking about cost structure? I mean, when I there were a couple things that you touched on there. So you were talking about like models are expensive to run. Let's see, where's some of the other things that you talked about. So like when you look at the cost structure for actually using Gen AI, every time you are you're actually using the APIs, every time you have one instance, you're doing a runtime, that costs money. But actually training, you are running thousands of times the same instance to try to train something. So training is actually the bulk of the cost. And so when you're thinking about, okay, what am I training? Again, you have to go back to the end use cases and think, what am I actually optimizing for? What are the knobs that I'm trying to turn on in terms of latency or accuracy? What do your PR curves look like? Like, what do you actually care about hitting? And how much do you care about using the full power of those models versus, doing some model optimization, quantizing the model, having quantize-aware training? If this resonates with any of you, basically figuring out how you can condense the models and run it in smaller packages so you can actually still get to the same place where you need at the end of the day in terms of just even fine-tuning, but at a much more reduced cost structure. And I think you were talking a little bit about cascading and chaining as well, which is like another strategy for how you might compare and contrast those two. So obviously, like, how do you reduce your training costs? If you actually are thinking you need to be building this software from scratch, is something that you should be thinking about. And also, how am I thinking about this in a hybrid solution? Because privacy comes into play. So do you want to be doing web ML, or do you want to be doing on-device ML on mobile devices where your customer's using these products? And how much do you need to be balancing between trying to actually run something in an even smaller package? And how much performance are you willing to give up? This is continuing to resonate with everybody. I see some nodding heads. Okay, everybody's trying to build for like mobile endpoints. This is shocking, right? It's like consumers make decisions on their devices on a daily basis. So that's a big piece of it. And then obviously getting data. Let's say like you're like, okay, I'm just going to fine tune. Getting the data is expensive, right? And I think there's actually going to be a ton of innovation in the hardware that gets unstructured data, and I think there's going to be a lot of need for more expertise in those non-fungible areas. I mean, how many people have expertise in real-time communications or media streaming, where a lot of these incredible experiences are going to happen, from making decisions on shopping, like real-time deciding what should be in my house. All of that is happening while you have to be able to understand and process all of these models in an extremely low latency environment. So most end customers can tell when stuff's off if your experience hits over 300 milliseconds of latency. Do you think most of these large language models are running in that kind of latency? Like, this means you have to get it down to like a 30, 20 millisecond piece of latency in your latency stack when you're looking at those end experiences. It's a little mind-boggling when you're actually trying to like figure out, okay, how do I smush down this model enough, right? But you're trying to get that data because data's expensive. Absolutely. For all of the fairness and privacy use cases.
Absolutely, yeah.
Sorry, I can continue rambling on this, but I want you to, because we started talking about unstructured data, so I feel like you probably have a few things to. It's not a hot topic.
I have one that is that keeps me up at night. A barrier, and it's trust. It's a big deal. We need to solve these issues of hallucination, and we need to solve it quick. And I'm going to open a window into the future for you guys who probably are seeing Gen AI through ChatGPT and that kind of stuff. We are really looking at this, trying to solve this validation of the outputs of these models. We are really good. We got really good in terms of accuracy when it comes to machine learning. But this is a big problem that we're having. And the reason why I'm saying it's big now and in the future is because generative AI is going to be more than what you're seeing today in terms of text. UI is going to be generated in the near future by these models of generative AI model. So imagine a model that learns how people use a computer, and rather than having menus, it just goes and build a UI just for the way that that person works. Imagine that moment in time, and if you haven't seen it, if you can think about it, go and watch Tom Cruise movie Minority Report, and you will see what I'm talking about when he does stuff on the screen. That's coming. That's coming.
Yeah.
And the reason why that's coming is because generative AI is a manifestation of the way that we do stuff on the enterprise. Everything we do in business is linguistics. The way that we enter data on a thing, that we register stuff, is basically communicating with our language what happened at a transaction level. The way that we read a report is basically human language taking numbers to communicate in a story. Those numbers, not about the numbers, what you see on the financial thing, it's in a story about where a company is, where a nonprofit is. We have gotten at a point in history in which there is a real interface between humans and machines, and is linguistic. It's the way that we communicate everything we do. So generative AI is going to permeate everything in the enterprise, because everything we do is basically communication, is language. Look at it. Everything you do, like entering stuff, registering stuff. The first form of written language that we know as humans, millions of years ago, finding a couple of cages, is basically counts. People were counting stuff, and you look at it, it's accounting, the first thing. But those just a way of communication, a form of language. Everything we do, guys, everything we do, our brains, everything we do is linguistics. You see them in numbers and all that. So we need to solve this problem of hallucination, because that's the way how numbers, how actions are going to be manifested. When we have a computer telling a system, go and run this particular line of assembly line, is basically, if you retrospect that, is basically the same thing that we were doing back in the days when there was a supervisor going and saying, hey, let's go and move this, come help me out here. Communicating that. That is linguistics, that's the way that we communicate, and that's generative AI in essence. It's that bridge in between the machines and ourselves. And if we don't solve this problem now, we're going to have big problems in the future. So that's the one that holds me at night.
Can I ask you a question on that? Are you saying, I think there's a place for hallucinations in terms of creativity use cases. So I think there's going to need to be kind of better guardrails around recitation and grounding.
Let me answer that with something I tell my customers, and everybody knows here. Some of you have probably remember in middle school when you were supposed to bring an essay or give a talk on a Monday or a Tuesday after a long weekend, and you didn't do your homework, and you show up there,
Never happened.
And if the first person that they call is you, and you go, oh shit, I need to talk about this thing now. So what do? You start inventing things, right? You start just out of your, you start coming up with the stuff. I know some of you have done it. I did it.
Like the panel today.
Yeah, you start coming up with the stuff. Unless there is unless the teacher there stop you from doing that, you will continue doing that, and it might become the law of the land. People might become and say, oh yeah, that was great. That's the same thing. There is a space for that, but there has to be a teacher who holds you accountable for what you're saying.
Who holds us accountable? That's not the answer we're going to dig into, right?
The Googles, the Oracles, Microsoft of the world, maybe?
Yeah.
So before we wrap up, because I know there's a bunch of great panels this evening, what is one place you go to or source you like for recent AI or machine learning news, whether it's a podcast or Substack, or do you have a favorite place that you think everyone should be aware of?
I get so much information on YouTube, like forget it. Yeah, it's insane. Wake up.
Do you have a favorite channel?
Today, by the way, today I was listening to Satya and Sam Altman speak to the chief editor of Economist. It was a really good interview. I think you should all watch it. Right, a lot of insights there. Nothing, in particular. I listened to what was that, Lex Friedman. Huge fan. Right, I listen to every podcast. And I get a lot of information from YouTube, Coursera, Udacity, Udemy, and just read. Right, if you just open LinkedIn. It's like an ocean of information, right? You can, everything is right there, right? Or Twitter, right? And you listen to some of those Gen AI channels, you get so much information. In fact, there's an explosion of information. It's hard to absorb everything. But yeah, I mean, I think it happens organically for me, right? It's not like I'm deliberately trying to learn, but it just keeps coming, and you learn through osmosis, right? You sit in a room at Microsoft and you learn a lot. You go talk to Google, for instance, and you learn a lot. So yeah, very organic, and I'm motivated because I do this and it's my livelihood, so I learn more. Because clients ask me all this tough questions every day. They ask me, today somebody asked me about the difference between SLM and LLM, and they were like, should I invest in this or that? And I had to give a good answer. So yeah, it's very organic, right? There's no one source I go to, at least personally, and yeah, so.
Sharbani, do you have a favorite source?
I have probably three channels,
That's
three
great.
three kind of channels of things that I look at. So one, I'm lucky that internally we've got a few teams that kind of send general digests of daily updates and happenings, because I find that I try to stay off of social media because it just, I end up in some sort of vortex always. So that's a me thing, not a you thing. So general digest. Two, I have got to keep up to date on academic papers given my team. So just trying to kind of keep a regular survey, and I've got a few, smart people who are way smarter than me. And I'm like, hey, what are you reading? And kind of steal their ideas. And then there's a few kind of deep subreddits and PyTorch communities that I try to dig into the bowels of just to see what, various hackers are talking about. So yeah.
I rely on the community, so I a lot of LinkedIn focus ones. I'm a member of the Stanford group that is doing some research on it, so I recommend you to check HCAI. There is a site for human-centered AI from Stanford University. We have some good content there, but there is a lot of stuff. I'm working on agents right now, so a lot of research on that. So if any of you have any papers related to agents, please forward it to me. But the community in general, try to build on it, go after. There's so much stuff going on that you could get lost on this universe of information. Find a couple of sources and make friends. Make friends on LinkedIn. That's probably the best way that you will have to be informed.
Thank you, everyone.
Did the audience want to ask anything, or am I don't know if that's. Okay.
And we will be around for some time. So if you have questions, if you have interesting stuff to talk about, recipes, food, let us know.
About that. Yeah. We realized that we probably have all of the answers to 20% of your questions.
That's correct.
So, thank you.
Thank you.